3 days ago, Colin Hayes looked me in the eye, shook my hand, and told me the promotion I've been chasing for years was finally mine. I left his office in Dallas that afternoon feeling 10 feet tall. I'd earned it 14 years of late nights, missed birthdays, and contracts saved at the last possible second. I believed every word he said. This morning I walked out of that same building carrying a cardboard box with my name scrawled on it. No handshake, no explanation, just a security guard by the elevator watching to make sure I left without a scene. It's a strange thing how quickly loyalty can turn into liability in corporate America. One day you're the guy they can't live without. The next you're a line item in a restructuring memo. I could feel the sting in my chest, but it wasn't sadness. It wasn't shock. It was something colder, sharper. Revenge isn't always about rage. Sometimes it's about calculation, the slow, quiet kind that doesn't make noise until it's too late for them to stop it. And if you've ever had someone smile in your face while planning your downfall, you'll want to hear this one to the very end. Because what Colin didn't know, what no one in that office knew, was that I'd been preparing for this day long before he thought of it. And when the fallout came, it wouldn't just bruise egos. It would cost them everything. Stick around. And if you don't want to miss the moment this story turns on its head, hit that subscribe button now. 3 days ago, Colin Hayes, my manager for the last 7 years, leaned back in his chair, smiled like he was letting me in on a secret, and said the words I've been waiting my entire career to hear. "Ryan, it's time. We're making you regional director." It happened in his glass-walled office on the 21st floor of Clayton & Wolf Logistics, downtown Dallas. Sunlight bounced off the skyscrapers outside, painting his desk in gold. I remember thinking, this was it. 14 years of late nights, canceled vacations, and missed birthday dinners were finally paying off. I left that office with my chest high and my heart pounding. On the elevator ride down, I caught my reflection in the mirrored walls. For the first time in years, I liked what I saw, not just the tired eyes or the lines on my face, but the man who had finally climbed to the place he deserved. Hannah, my wife, cried when I told her that night. Not the sad kind of tears, the kind you get when the weight you've been carrying for years finally lifts. Our son, Ben, hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. He didn't understand the title or the pay raise, but he knew it meant I'd be home more often. I promised him I would be. In that moment, I believed every word Colin said. I had no reason not to. And if you've ever had someone look you in the eye and make a promise you thought was unbreakable, you already know how dangerous that kind of trust can be. My name is Ryan Mercer. I'm 44 years old, Senior Operations Manager at Clayton & Wolf Logistics. At least that's what it said on my business card 3 days ago. 14 years ago, I started here as a junior scheduler in our Dallas branch. Back then, Clayton & Wolf was just a mid-tier shipping company with one warehouse in Texas and a reputation for being good enough. But I wasn't interested in good enough. I wanted this place to become the gold standard for logistics in the Southwest. So I pushed. I streamlined routes no one thought could be shortened. I built a training program that turned rookies into seasoned pros in 6 months. I negotiated contracts that kept our trucks moving when everyone else's were stuck in port delays. And slowly we grew one contract, one client, 1 year at a time. I live in Plano, just 30 minutes north of downtown. My wife Hannah has been my anchor through every late night and early morning. She's a nurse at Baylor Scott & White, the kind of person who can walk out of a 12-hour shift and still ask about your day. Our son Ben is 11 now. Soccer practice, twice a week guitar lessons on Saturdays. We're not rich, we're not flashy, but every mile I've put in for this company, every weekend I've missed, was supposed to buy us something more than just bills getting paid. That's why Colin's promise mattered. It wasn't just about me. It was about giving my family back the time they'd sacrificed without complaint. I didn't know it then, but that promise would set off a chain of events that would burn every bridge I'd spent my career building. Asterisk. Colin Hayes wasn't just my boss. For years, he was the guy I'd grab a beer with after a 16-hour day. We'd swap war stories about busted deadlines and miracle turnarounds, laugh about clients who thought overnight shipping meant time travel. When I first joined Clayton & Wolf, Colin was already a rising star in operations. He was sharp, decisive, and back then fair. He taught me how to navigate the politics upstairs, how to stand my ground without burning bridges. He once told me, "Ryan, you can't move freight if you can't move people." That line stuck with me. Over time, we built something that felt like a partnership. When he was promoted to VP of operations, I was genuinely happy for him. I thought his rise meant mine wasn't far behind. And in a way, it wasn't. Over the last few years, he trusted me with the company's biggest accounts, military supply contracts, hurricane relief shipments, even last year's vaccine distribution push. So when Colin sat me down in that glass-walled office and promised me the regional director role, I didn't question it. I didn't think I needed to. This was Colin, my mentor, my friend. Looking back, I realized how dangerous that blind trust was. Because what I saw as loyalty, Colin must have seen as leverage. And as I'd soon find out, in corporate America, leverage is just another word for an easy target. The first crack showed up less than a week after that promotion talk. I walked into our Monday operations meeting, expecting the usual Colin at the head of the table, me at his right, walking through our weekly shipping schedules. But that morning, my seat was taken. Sitting there was Madison Price, 27 straight from Atlanta, still on her probation period. Her resume looked good on paper, Ivy League degree, a couple of internships, but she'd never run a distribution center, never handled a crisis shipment. And yet Colin was introducing her as the new point of contact for one of our largest accounts. I tried not to read too much into it. People move around in this business all the time. But then I noticed something else, the way Colin skipped over me when assigning tasks, the way Madison kept glancing at him before speaking like she was checking for approval. After the meeting, I caught up with Colin in the hallway. "Hey, what's going on with the Harbor Freight account? That's been mine for 3 years. He smiled that same smile he used when smoothing over a client complaint. "Just shifting some responsibilities, Ryan. You've got bigger things coming your way, remember." It was meant to reassure me. Instead, it felt like someone sliding a piece off the chessboard while telling me not to worry about the game. I didn't know it yet, but this was the first move in a strategy that had nothing to do with promotions and everything to do with replacing me. By the following week, the shift was impossible to ignore. It started small, a few meeting invites that never showed up in my inbox. At first, I told myself it was a scheduling glitch, but deep down, there was this low hum in my chest. The same feeling I used to get right before a shipment went sideways. Something was moving behind the scenes. Then the project status reports I'd always reviewed were suddenly being sent to Madison. She replied, all with updates. That sounded a little too much like my own work cut, polished, and stamped with her name. One Thursday morning, I walked past the 10th floor conference room and saw the door closed. Through the glass, I spotted Colin Madison and 3 senior managers huddled over contract drafts for the Port of Houston expansion, the account I'd fought tooth and nail to secure. When I asked Colin about it later, he waved it off. "Ryan, you've got a lot on your plate already. Let Madison handle some of the load." His tone was casual, but his eyes didn't match. There was calculation there, like a man already playing the end game. That afternoon, I checked my calendar. The standing one-on-one with Colin, the weekly check-in we'd kept for years, was gone. No reschedule, no explanation, just gone. I'd seen this pattern before. Not in shipping, but in poker games back in college. First, they ease you out of the pot. Then before you know it, you're watching the game from the sidelines, wondering when you stop being a player at all. And I had a sick feeling in my gut that I was about to find out. The confirmation didn't come from Colin. It came from someone who had nothing to gain by telling me. Brian Keller works in HR 20 years with the company, the kind of guy who knows where every skeleton is buried. We'd shared coffee breaks and hallway jokes for years. That Friday afternoon, he stopped by my office, closed the door behind him, and glanced toward the hallway before speaking. "Ryan, you didn't hear this from me," he said, lowering his voice, "but Colin's been having closed-door meetings with upper management. Your name's been coming up, and not in a good way." I leaned back, trying to keep my face neutral. "What's the context?" Brian hesitated. "They're talking about restructuring your role, using phrases like redistribution of responsibilities and cost efficiency. You know what that means." I knew exactly what it meant. In corporate language, those are just polite ways of saying your job is on the chopping block. "You've been here long enough to read the tea leaves," Brian added. "If I were you, I'd start planning something." That word something hung in the air long after he left. It wasn't just a warning that hit me. It was who it came from. Brian doesn't involve himself in politics. If he was sticking his neck out to give me a heads up, it meant the decision was already in motion. And if they were already moving pieces behind closed doors, then I had a choice: wait for the axe to fall or start sharpening my own blade. The email came on a Monday morning just before lunch. Subject line: transition meeting. 1:00 p.m. No explanation, no details. I walked into the HR conference room at 1 o'clock sharp. Colin wasn't there, just Janet Morrison, our HR director, with a manila folder in front of her. Ryan, I'm afraid your role has been impacted by a restructuring initiative. She began, her voice even practiced. Your last day will be today. I didn't interrupt. I didn't argue. I've been in enough boardrooms to know the script. You'll receive 8 weeks of severance continuation of benefits through the end of the month. She kept talking, but my mind drifted. Images of 14 years worth of midnight problem-solving, emergency phone calls, and impossible deadlines flashed through my head. And now all of it was being wrapped up in a tidy HR speech. I signed the paperwork. Janet slid over a small cardboard box. We've had security collect your personal items from your desk. Security. Of course. The quiet insult in the whole process, as if I'd suddenly become a threat the moment my badge was deactivated. When I stepped into the hallway, a uniformed guard was waiting by the elevator. No words, just a nod toward the open doors. It's a special kind of humiliation being walked out of the place you helped build, while people you train pretend not to see you. But humiliation has a strange way of hardening into something else. And by the time I reached the parking garage, I wasn't thinking about what I'd lost. I was thinking about what they were about to lose. On the drive home, I couldn't stop replaying the years that led me here. I remembered the winter storm of 2014 when half the state shut down, and our trucks were stranded in Amarillo. I slept on the warehouse floor for 3 nights, coordinating reroutes, so we wouldn't lose a single client. I thought about the hurricane relief shipments in 2017, the ones that had to reach Houston hospitals within 24 hours, or lives would be lost. I was on the phone all night arranging helicopters when the highways flooded. Colin called me a hero for that one. Then there were the smaller sacrifices: skipping Ben's soccer championship because a shipment from El Paso was delayed, missing Hannah's birthday dinner because a warehouse fire in San Antonio needed my attention. I always told myself it was temporary, that once I climbed high enough, I'd have the time to make it up to them. Every late night, every missed moment, I justified with the same promise: this will pay off. And for a while, I thought it had. Until I realized that in the eyes of the people upstairs, loyalty isn't a currency, it's a discount. They'll take every ounce you give and still decide you cost too much. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the humiliation from earlier had settled into something colder. I wasn't just angry at Colin. I was angry at myself for thinking I owed them more than they owed me. And that's when I decided, if they wanted me gone, I'd make sure they felt the absence. The first step in any counterattack is gathering intel. I still had access to my company email for a few hours after HR walked me out. They must have forgotten to deactivate it immediately. I started forwarding key contract shipment logs and budget reports to my personal drive. Nothing illegal, all documents I'd authored or managed myself, but enough to map out exactly how Colin had been shifting credit from my work to Madison. That's when the message popped up in the corner of my screen at security: has initiated an access review for your account. My pulse spiked. That wasn't routine. Someone, probably Madison, had flagged my credentials for review. If it locked me out before I finished, I'd lose half the evidence I needed. I switched to my phone's hotspot, bypassing the company network entirely, and moved faster. Folder after folder, I dumped years of work into an encrypted archive. Then I heard the ping of an incoming email from Madison. Hey Ryan, just a heads up, it's doing some account audits this afternoon. You might get a notice. The fake, casual tone only confirmed my suspicion she knew exactly what she'd triggered. I didn't reply. Instead, I closed every open file, wiped my activity logs, and shut down the laptop. By the time it sent the access suspended notification, my archive was already syncing to a drive they couldn't touch. If they suspected I was preparing for something, they were right. But they had no idea just how far I was willing to take it. 2 days after I secured the last of my files, Mark Elson's name flashed across my phone. I didn't even get a hello before his voice came through low, cautious. Listen, Ryan, we're not talking about this over the phone. That one sentence told me everything. Mark hadn't changed. He was still the same hyper-cautious operator who never made a move without an exit plan. 5 years ago, Colin forced him out of Clayton and Wolf, using the exact same restructuring playbook he'd just pulled on me. Mark vanished from the industry almost overnight. I always wondered why. That night I drove to a small coffee shop in Plano parking, 2 blocks away. Mark was already there, tucked into the corner table with his back to the wall, eyes scanning the room like every customer might be working for Colin. Without a word, he slid a thick envelope across the table, his hand never leaving his coffee cup. "In here," he said, "are emails, reports, and notes from closed-door meetings. All of it proves Colin's been planning to cut high-salary staff right before bonus season, so the payouts land in his circle instead." I opened the flap just enough to see the subject line on one email: Cost Optimization Q4 Strategy. My name appeared in the third line. Mark locked eyes with me. "If you use this, you'd better be ready. Once you pull the trigger, there's no taking it back." I nodded, sliding the envelope into my jacket pocket. My pulse was steady, not from fear, but from the certainty that I now held the bullet that could end Colin's career for good. With Mark's envelope locked in my desk, the next step wasn't rage. It was precision. I spent the next 2 nights in my home office, blinds drawn, screens glowing. My wife Hannah knew better than to ask questions she'd seen this side of me before, back when the stakes were contracts worth millions. I started mapping Colin's pressure points, every major account he boasted about in board meetings, every quarterly stat he used to paint himself as the golden boy of operations, every client relationship his reputation leaned on. I built 2 reports, the official version that made him look untouchable, and the private version that told the truth. Inflated delivery times, deadlines missed and buried under creative spreadsheets, budget overruns disguised as strategic expenses. But numbers alone weren't enough. I needed to make them land where it hurt most, in the hands of people with no loyalty to Colin. So I reached out to old allies in procurement, shipping, even a contact in the Port of Houston's scheduling office. I didn't send them everything, just small, carefully chosen pieces, the kind that looked harmless alone, but together would form a picture no one could ignore. This wasn't about swinging wild. It was about pulling threads, because with men like Colin, you don't need to break the whole wall. You just find the right brick, and the rest comes crashing down on its own. And as I watched the network of quiet whispers start to spread, I knew it was only a matter of time before he felt the ground shift under his feet. By Thursday, Madison was gone, escorted out by the same security guard who'd walked me to the elevator, and Colin suspended pending further review. That's when the call came. The CFO herself. "Ryan, I think we may have misjudged your value to the company. Would you consider coming back? Not in your old role, something bigger. Special advisor to the CFO has a nice ring to it, don't you think?" I almost laughed. Less than a month ago, I was a cost efficiency casualty. Now the same people who'd boxed up my career were handing me the keys to Colin's old influence. For a split second, I pictured it walking back into that 21st floor office, shaking hands with board members while Colin read about it from his couch. It would have been sweet, but not enough. Because the truth was, taking their offer would mean stepping back into the same glass cage I'd just escaped. And revenge, at least for me, wasn't about swapping cages. It was about burning the whole blueprint. "Appreciate the offer," I told her. "But I'm building something of my own now. And trust me, you'll hear about it." As I hung up, I felt that quiet satisfaction you only get when you win without even playing their game. And somewhere in that high-rise, I knew Colin was going to hear those words secondhand, which, honestly, made them land even better. It happened on a Tuesday morning fitting, really, since Tuesdays were the day Colin liked to send out his flashy team wins emails. This one didn't come from him. It came from the CFO's office marked Confidential Executive Review. By noon, the whispers had started. Someone in accounting leaked that an internal audit was underway. By 2 o'clock, I got a text from Brian and HR Collins in a closed door with the board. "Looks bad." It didn't just look bad, it was catastrophic. The discrepancies I'd planted were the spark, but the audit had dug deeper. They'd found years of manipulated performance reports, creative accounting that turned missed targets into over-deliveries, and bonus reallocations that always seemed to land in the laps of Colin's chosen people. By Thursday, Madison was gone, escorted out by the same security guard who'd walked me to the elevator, and Colin suspended pending further review. That's when the call came, the CFO herself. "Ryan, I think we may have misjudged your value to the company. Would you consider coming back? Not in your old role, something bigger." Special advisor to the CFO has a nice ring to it, don't you think? I almost laughed. Less than a month ago, I was just another cost efficiency casualty. Now they were offering me a seat above the man who'd tried to erase me. It was tempting poetic even, but revenge isn't always about taking their offer. Sometimes it's about making them wish you had. I told the CFO I appreciated the offer, but I was already committed to my own future. 2 weeks later, I filed the LLC paperwork for Mercer Logistics Solutions. Within 3 months, we had our first major client, a defense contractor who ironically had just ended their contract with Clayton & Wolf after the audit. From my new office in Plano, I could see the same downtown skyline I'd looked at for years from the 21st floor. Only now, it wasn't a reminder of what I'd lost. It was proof of what I'd built. Colin's name vanished from industry events. Word was he'd been blacklisted after the audit report leaked. Madison's LinkedIn showed a short stint at a small brokerage before disappearing entirely. And me, my calendar was full, my clients paid on time, and I was finally making every one of Ben's soccer games. Hannah said she hadn't seen me this happy in years. I didn't need to stand in that glass-walled office again to feel vindicated. The real victory was knowing they had to watch me succeed without them. In business, revenge doesn't always mean tearing the other person down. Sometimes it's about climbing so high they can't even reach you to apologize. And as I locked up my office one Friday evening, watching the sun set over Dallas, I realized something. Colin had taken my job, but in doing so, he'd handed me my freedom. That's the kind of win you don't celebrate loudly. You just live it every single day. Looking back now, I can see it clearly. The warning signs, the shifting tone, the quiet meetings I wasn't invited to. But here's the thing. Getting blindsided isn't the end of your story. It can be the beginning of the one you actually want to write. If you've ever been cut loose, underestimated, or replaced by someone less experienced, you know the sting. You also know the temptation to fight back the loud way to burn bridges just to watch the flames. I'm here to tell you the quiet kind of revenge lasts longer. Build something for yourself. Win contracts they thought you couldn't land. Show up in places they can't control. Let your success speak in rooms they no longer have the key to. Colin once told me you can't move freight if you can't move people. Back then I thought he was teaching me leadership. Turns out he was teaching me my exit strategy. Because now I'm moving people, clients, partners, entire markets right out of his reach. Colin thought he was removing a problem. In reality, he was creating a competitor. And every time my company outbids his old firm, I don't have to say a word. The results say it for me. So if you're watching this and you're in that moment, the one where the door just slams shut, don't waste energy pounding on it. Turn around, there's a bigger one waiting for you to open it. This was my story. One of many revenge stories I'll share here. If you've got your own, or you're just here for the ride, hit subscribe. Because, trust me, some of the best paybacks are still ahead.